Here we go. Okay. So I am going to just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to start to share my screen. And hopefully everyone can see. Yes. Great. So thank you so much for joining, those of you who are on the line. We're really excited to have our second New York City Work User Group meeting. So thanks for joining. And we are advertising this as a bit of a shorter meeting. Couple of reasons for that, and we'll go into that in a bit. But you'll notice that I'm solo today. So Colby, who is my co-leader, is on paternity leave. I actually did, we chatted a bit this week, and I let him know that this was happening. But he is very much in love with his new little boy, and he'll be back from paternity leave probably in early October. So we're looking to get our fall meeting it'll be probably early November. We don't want to go too close to the holiday. And then for those of you who are on the line, we would love to hear who you are and what's important to you. So if you want, add your name, organization, Workfront experience and level, and maybe something you love about Workfront in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We like to do this. We did this last time too, so it's just kind of nice. So I'm going to go through the agenda today. I'll quickly go through the housekeeping. There are some important things I need to say, and then we'll jump right in. I'm going to advertise the skills exchange after party, which is coming up next week. I'll introduce our special speaker, who is going to discuss user adoption today. I'll advertise about the survey that you'll be getting after, and then we'll just open it up for any additional questions. So to dive right into the housekeeping, if you're having any technical issues, please just put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. I have it up, and I'll be watching that throughout. And then we're just going to ask, if you're not speaking, just to mute your microphones to reduce any background noise or anything that might unexpectedly arise during the meeting. And then also, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to, say how much you liked something that was on the screen, please use that chat function. We're happy to hear from you. And then also, just in the interest of time, if we are going to run long, I'll let you know. I'll chime in and let you know that it's looking like we might go a few minutes past the 45 minutes that we have slotted for today. Last thing with this slide, if you aren't a part of our user group and you do want to join, there's a URL on the screen right here. However, I am going to also put that in the chat so that you can copy that and perhaps join our group. Okay, so now for the Adobe house rules. There are 3 things that we really need to drive home, and we just want to make this a safe space for everyone who's on these calls. We ask that there's no self-promotion. We don't want you pitching anything specific to your organization. It's not permitted by Adobe. And then we also ask that you don't contact any of the users outside of this meeting unless they give you their consent. So, if you come off mute and there's a lively conversation and you say, hey, I want to get in touch with you, and both of you agree, great, feel free. And then also, if another member shares information about their organization or their Workfront instance or a specific use case, we'd ask that you don't share that information unless, again, they give their consent. Okay, so the last bit of housekeeping is that this is a recorded meeting, and these recordings will be posted to the Adobe User Group YouTube channel. They like to put them up there. It helps to promote training and future learning. So there is an opportunity for you to also view these, or anyone that you think might gain value from the information that's shared today. They'll be out there. And then also, if you don't wish to participate, just let me know, or you can always email me or advocacy@adobe.com. We're happy to hear from you. Okay, so that is all about the housekeeping. I just wanted to speed through that. Very important to state these ground rules before we dive in. So one little bit of advertising before I introduce our speaker. There is going to be a Workfront skill exchange after party. It's been organized by the Southern California Workfront User Group. Becky Barras is the co-leader there, and she's really led the charge to get this after party together. All Workfront user groups are welcome, so this isn't isolated to the SoCal chapter. This is welcome. You're welcome to join. And there is a QR code up on the screen right now, and a very mini URL. I am going to be adding that URL into the chat window as well once we dive in. So no worries. Look for that in a little bit. It's, oh, just to mention, I know you see it here on the screen, but it's next Wednesday. It starts at 9 Pacific time, so that's noon Eastern time. And with that, I'm going to go right over to the next slide and introduce our guest speaker. Today, Danielle Johnston is joining us. She is a Customer Success Manager with Adobe. She's located in Illinois, and she is an expert in many things Workfront. And specifically today, she's going to share some information about user adoption and governance, and we're really excited to have her. So welcome, Danielle.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk with you all today. I was a Workfront specific customer success manager where I worked with Workfront customers for about 3 years. Workfront admins were some of my favorite people to work with. I still talk to a lot of the admins that I worked with. I just had a lot of fun with it. I went on maternity leave mid last year, and then at the end of 2024, I came back and joined the healthcare team. So I'm kind of a part of the full DX suite now. But Workfront is still very near and dear to my heart. I did recently speak at Skill Exchange, so this is going to be more about adoption. I do touch on governance a little bit in this presentation. If you're interested in learning more about governance, I could definitely, my Skill Exchange will be posted soon. All right.
Hang on a minute. So sorry. There we go.
All right, so today we're going to be focusing on tackling user adoption. We can go to the next slide. So user adoption is a very big topic. I am going to give a lot of tips and tricks. I do always like to make sure to stress to admins that when it comes to user adoption, it is not one singular path that you are going to walk down. I'm sure you all know that, but it is multiple different paths, different teams, different things are going to work for different teams. And different things are going to work for different people. I always like to talk about when it comes to Workfront adoption, we are talking about the way that people are managing their day and are managing work. So it definitely is a little bit different than like an analytics platform or a DAM or using AEM sites. It is, you are asking people to change the way that they work and how they collaborate and how they deliver projects. So it's integrated into their lives, which is why sometimes change and adoption can be a little bit more challenging. I'm sorry, Joanne, this is actually my old presentation.
Oh, no.
I think the new one didn't go in. So is it okay for me to share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
'Cause I
sorry.
changed a couple of things. No, no worries at all.
I pulled up the slide deck. Maybe there was just a miscommunication. So sorry.
There just must have been a mistake. I'm sure it was something on my end. Sorry, everybody. It is different. So I just want to make sure that the right message is communicated. I also want to make sure I have not used this before. How do I share my screen?
So there,
Here it is.
down at the bottom, it says share screen.
There it is. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So the road to positive adoption, like I said, it takes a lot of time. And I broke this up into 5 different categories, which is establishing guidance and governance across the organization, designing with end users in mind, clearly communicating value and use cases, empowering users through enablement, and navigating change together. So now we're going to talk through how to find some solutions when it comes to user adoption. I always say, and I say this in my presentation and skill exchange, I firmly believe that all roads start with governance. Governance with Workfront is a very important topic, and that's why I touch on it a little bit in this conversation. But in my opinion, for a successful adoption, you also have to have successful governance. And what does it look like to have some governance in mind? First, it's really okay to start small when it comes to governance. Governance is not always going to be starting with overhauling all of your processes, overhauling all of your permissions, overhauling all of your training. It is going to be starting small and chipping away at things. Where can you find consistency and standardization that is going to make life easier for end users? The next is really having clear roles and permissions to help reduce friction amongst the users. Where I see a lot of problems with adoption, and this is just what I've seen kind of in different user groups and in different with different system admins, is somebody that just needs to log in and see a couple of dashboards. They're able to see everything within governance. They have way too many permissions. There's way too much that they're able to see, and they log in and they just get very overwhelmed. That's where you can make adjustments to what their permissions actually look like, do permissions that make sense, make updates to layout templates, and just make it very easy for them to use. The third is making sure that you have a really you have great data quality. I love the phrase, good data comes in, good data comes out. We want to make sure that Workfront is actually useful for the end user, and that there's a lot of really great reports that you can do in Workfront. I'm sure that everybody here knows that. But really having some great and successful dashboards where users are able to log in and see, this is what my day looks like. These are my projects. These are my requests. Everything is on their dashboard, and it's very easy for them to use. And that all starts with good data quality. Next is governance can really help with easing onboarding and training. So working with different group admins or different SMEs within your governance organization and within your Workfront admin practice to help ease the onboarding and training with users. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more further on in the presentation, but making sure that training and onboarding is really easy for users to understand and it fits their persona. But again, I dive into that a little bit deeper. The last, and again, this is really important when it comes to adoption, governance and all of those things that I just talked about. If you have kind of those things lined up in a really positive way with governance, that's going to enable you to scale your organization. Again, I've seen so many admins that they are just so bogged down by their day-to-day job, and there is not a governance structure and they don't have any support underneath them, that they are really trying to scale. And there are other organizations that want to adopt the tool, but they're just not built to scale. All right, next slide. So like I said, it all starts with having a really strong governance foundation, which leads to positive adoption. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I forgot that you're not sharing, Joanne.
Sorry.
So how different roles within a governance and system admin practice play a part in adoption. Again, this is pretty high level, but the system admin, which I believe is everybody here, you're really helping communicate the long-term vision with the organization. You're communicating any adoption problems to leadership, and you're helping support use cases and value stories. So you're talking with group admins and end users about what is the reason that they are actually using Workfront. How does that connect with your long-term vision, and how does that help support adoption? The group admin is proactively bringing adoption problems to the system admin. They're collectively problem solving and making updates to the system to help maintain and improve adoption. And then power users and SMEs are bringing ideas to help improve adoption and supporting training and enablement. So a lot of times the power users and the SMEs are really at the ground level, and they're able to see different breaks in their process or different ways to help improve adoption, and they're leveling that up to the group admin and system admin. Next, we're going to talk about end user personas. So really thinking about how your end user personas come into play when you're thinking about adoption. So a big problem that I see is that users disengage due to irrelevant workflows and interfaces, and adoption is stalling when tools are not aligning with their work. So what that means is, again, somebody that is in marketing or somebody that is in, let's go with the kind of sales, with somebody in sales. Typically all somebody in sales has to do is they have to come in, they have to see a request, they have to see their request, and they have to see the progress of their requests. They do not need to see the full end-to-end project lifecycle. They don't need to see resource management. They don't need to be playing with layout templates. Their instance should be very simple. Where somebody like a project manager, they're going to have very different needs. Their instance is going to be a little bit more complicated. They're going to need more training. So having conversations with each of your different groups and each of your different personas about what is the value that Workfront can bring to them. And I always like to say, if you go to somebody and just say, how is Workfront going to bring value to you? Which I've gotten in that rabbit hole myself. They're going to probably look and say, I don't really know. I don't know the system. I don't know the tool. So having conversations about how do you work and what are problems that you are seeing in your work process that I can help fix, that will start to get people talking. And that's where you can come up with personalized training, layout templates, dashboards that are supporting their work, and truly understanding what is the value that this tool can bring to them, and then sharing that back with them. So after you design with them in mind, I strongly encourage you to share, hey, I made an update to your layout template, or I made an update to your permissions. What do you think about this? Try it out for a couple of weeks. Let's see how it makes your life a little bit easier. Or anybody with Fusion. I have seen that utilizing Fusion with end user persona conversations is really, really powerful, because you can show, you talked me through this process that is taking you 10 hours a week. I automated that. You don't have to do that anymore. And I did that with Workfront. Those are the types of things that really get people excited. I am going to add a link to the chat when I'm done, but adoption surveys are a really, really good way to understand user personas' needs and opportunities for improvement. There is a link to a chat for another admin. She was at Cognizant when she did this presentation, but I worked through adoption surveys with her, and she did kind of a system admin presentation about how she did the adoption survey. It was a really good one. So I'll make sure to add the link in the chat. But when you're thinking about adoption surveys, we strongly recommend doing an adoption survey. Adobe's recommendation is every 6 months. I know that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to do every 6 months. So I think that even trying once a year is great. But making sure that you have a very clear objective in mind when you're doing an adoption survey. So what are you trying to solve, and what message are you trying to come across? Are you trying to showcase, that Workfront adoption is really positive, and you're trying to showcase this to leadership to maybe get more funding? That is an objective. Or there's a very specific group that you're running into adoption problems with, and you want to send them a survey to kind of help figure out what value the tool can bring to them. That's an objective. I always recommend with adoption surveys, make sure to keep it simple and really to the point. Really make sure that you're communicating what is the objective of the survey, and try and keep it as short as you can. Really short, direct surveys are going to help generate more responses. And you always can, at the end of the survey, add a section where somebody can optionally add just general information that they want to add. And then, like I said, with frequency, Adobe's recommendation is sending it about 2 times a year. I think that 1 time a year for kind of a full organization is perfectly fine. You're going to get a lot of information, and it is going to take you some time to parse through that information and make updates. And then you want time to make sure that that change and update settles. And then if there are any special interest surveys, you could send that more often, especially if there's a new group that you're trying to enable, or if there's a group that is having a very direct adoption problem. If possible, we always recommend offering some incentives for returning survey responses in a timely manner. So maybe sending out a $5 gift card to the first 100 participants. I know that funding can be difficult for things like this, but if it is possible, try to offer some sort of incentive. I've seen people get excited about it. And then this is just a slide that I have on executing an adoption survey. I pulled this from a PDF all about best practices for sending an adoption survey, and kind of what is that review cycle of executing, measuring, reviewing, and planning. When I send out that link with the adoption survey webinar, there is a link to this PDF, which has all about adoption survey best practices if anybody's interested. Now, the next part when thinking about adoption is clearly articulating and communicating the value of your use cases. I always talk about, and Joanne and I had a good conversation about this, is I will ask system admins and group admins, what is your why Workfront statement? The reason that you purchased the tool is probably very different than the reason that you're using it now. And different groups are probably going to have different why Workfront statements. But truly, as a system admin, it's so important to be able to communicate back to the end users why Workfront is benefiting them as a worker. Because it is, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, this is something that is impacting people's work and it's impacting their day-to-day. So if you are able to make a big impact and make people's life easier with Workfront, that is a tool that they're going to really strongly adopt. I use Workfront in my day-to-day. I was somebody that when I first kind of got into Workfront, I had never heard of Workfront before, but interviewed for Adobe and ended up on the Workfront team. And once I really got into the tool, I was excited about it. I loved how easy it was to manage all of my projects. I was able to see, because I was kind of almost a consultant for customer success. So I worked with so many different customers, and I was able to kind of keep all of that information housed in one place, and people were able to call back to it later. That was a goal that our team had, that Workfront was able to achieve. And it really helped just get a group of 10 people that had never used Workfront before, adopt it, and learn to love it. And then also just making sure to understand how Workfront solves the user's individual problems in any way that you can, having those conversations about adoptions and their specific needs. And then showcasing the work that the tool is doing, especially with automations. That is very important. So what are different ways that you as system admins have made workers' lives easier? And what are some success stories that your champions are getting from the market? Making sure to showcase that and showing, this is an automation that I did that saved $250,000 a year, and it saved hundreds of hours of work. I can build the same automation for your team. Or I was able to put everybody's work in one single dashboard. I can do that for your team. So really understanding who your champions are and gathering those success stories to help communicate the value of Workfront. The last, this especially ties into adoption surveys, but if updates are requested and you are able to, with yourself or your group admins, if you have them, make those updates, communicate back to the person and let them know you asked for this, and I made this update. Please let me know, did it make a positive impact? Are you willing to speak about it if it was a larger update? And then I always encourage sending, either monthly or quarterly newsletters with any updates that you made as a system admin, because they are really valuable. I am going a little fast. I just am trying to be cognizant of time. I know Joanne has a little bit of stuff too. But this is a slide that—
Don't race, because we only have a few things right after you're done. So
okay,
please.
perfect. This is a slide that a Workfront consultant that I know well, he put together, and I am going to send just a a slide of this to Joanne that she can send out to the full user group. But I thought it was a really fantastic slide. He showed it at Skill Exchange and I asked if I could use it for here. But this is a really great slide on how to align business goals to showcase value. So he took, what is the situation or problem statement that I'm trying to solve? What is the background? What is my assessment? And what is my recommendation? So for example, this is a situation where he was looking for a way to improve analytics deliverables, save time, and reduce errors, and he utilized Fusion. So with that, he understood how many hours he was actually going to be saving and how much money somebody was paid per hour with this Fusion scenario to show out of the year, I'm saving $18,000. This is a really strong slide that he was able to show to executive leadership to showcase, this is the good work that we're doing with Workfront and Fusion. And like I said, I am going to send this slide. I do think it's a good one. I've had admins over the last couple of weeks be interested in it. So I'm going to send just the actual slide to Joanne so she can share it out. Oh, sorry, that's my dog. So I've talked a lot about enablement in different ways. And a big problem that I see, again, kind of in the marketplace is I know that admins have so much knowledge and so much information. And especially when you're onboarding a new team or even just starting fresh with Workfront, it's really easy to get excited. And I think that there is so much information that can be shared about Workfront that sometimes training can get a little convoluted. I've even seen training documentation myself where I'm trying to work through it and all I need to do is learn how to, make a request in a system or learn how to access a report. And I'm having to kind of scroll down 30, 40 pages of documentation. Again, that documentation, it's so valuable. It's so fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. But when thinking about end users and adoption, really trying to personalize the training a little bit. So I talked with Joanne. I'm personally a really big fan of Watch Me Work videos, having system admins, group admins, and SMEs getting on as that specific user persona. So let's say you're logging on as a creator. You're logging on as somebody that is actually going in and managing your work every day. So you log in as that person and you kind of take them through a day in the life of Workfront and calling out how Workfront, again, is making their day a little bit easier. It's going to be easier to get somebody to watch a 5 to 10 minute video that's showing them exactly what they need to do for their day instead of kind of scrolling through a lot of documentation and trying to find information. So definitely consider some of those personalized meetings and trainings in any ways that you can. I also, again, a really big fan of Q&A sessions. I'm a really big fan of kind of even live Watch Me Work series if you're able to get people to do that. But I think those recordings are fantastic. I always recommend having some sort of request queue for questions that any admin or SME is able to have access to. So people are able to submit a request with any sort of question or product update that they would like to see. And then the admin is able to communicate back and keep that communication going about any sort of updates or answers to the question. Again, getting people in Workfront as much as you can. And again, I know it's hard because I know a lot of admins, this is not your only job. You wear so many different hats, but having as much direct FaceTime with users as possible. So doing some sort of office hours or quarterly training, having that face-to-face interaction to get that feedback and go through that persona-based enablement is really going to kind of help connect with those end users. My last point, and I know that I'm sure so many admins are saying, I've tried this. There are so many different things that I've tried. Again, the road to change, it is not straight. There are so many different paths that you will take. There are some things that are going to work for one group that might not work for another. Some users are also just hesitant to change. And again, we're asking them to completely overhaul the way that they work. So from an empathetic perspective, I really understand. Tools like spreadsheets and using email to go back and forth on projects are just really familiar, and trying to overhaul them and get them into a system, it can be very challenging and it can be frustrating for an admin. So just some overall kind of summary tips. This is just a summary of all the tips that I've given. But again, really being able to know and communicate your why behind Workfront, understand that larger company strategy, and understand how Workfront can positively impact different groups is really going to be impactful. Really trying to be proactive with change management communication. I'm sure that everybody here has been in a situation where a big change, a big organization change came and you didn't get any information. It came overnight, and now you're expected to kind of change the way that you work or change the team that you are on overnight. It kind of just starts things off on a bad foot. So if any change is coming, like release notes from Adobe or any sort of release readiness, or if you're making an update to a process, trying to be as proactive as you can with that change management communication. Definitely utilizing dashboards. I am a big fan of blueprints. So definitely using some of those blueprints, like the core value dashboard, using some of those blueprints or using some of the information from the blueprints and copying it to demonstrate how Workfront is making a strong impact with your company, and trying to send these to everybody directly. So I've seen where these reports are sent as a PDF to different relevant users and executive stakeholders. I have also seen different system admins create a center of excellence where they have a SharePoint site and they upload all of this information, all of these dashboards to SharePoint using an integration. Just make these readily available for everybody to kind of see the impact that Workfront is making. Ensuring that information, training, and communications are very easy to access and everybody knows where to find them. Definitely, if able, consider regular newsletters with success stories, champion quotes, and anything that's up and coming with Workfront. And last but not least, this is just kind of one of my favorites, and one of my favorite pieces of advice is definitely leading change with empathy. I definitely see from a system admin perspective that it is very hard to convince people to change, but truly trying to understand people's problems and aim to solve them with Workfront solutions will really help get you a long way. And then again, this is just kind of my last summary slide of key elements for successful adoption, helping refine training and onboarding, and really utilizing those user personas, focusing on governance, best practices, governance and best practices, and standardizing your processes, having ongoing support wherever you can, and really focusing on that value communication. And then just this final reminder, just really anywhere that you can. Again, the system admin job is very, very tough. I always recognize that it is a very hard job, especially when it's coming to user adoption within Workfront. But really focus. A tip that I always like to give, and customer success managers at Adobe are always here to help with this. Just really try to focus on flexibility. Again, somebody may not be logging into Workfront every day. Where you can get some of those wins with adoption, that is always going to be a win. So maybe you won't get somebody to actually log into Workfront, but they're willing to use the Outlook integration. That is a massive win. That's a way to kind of meet somebody in the middle and be flexible, get the information into Workfront, but they're still working their way. And as a reminder, all of you admins are doing so fantastic. I just like to give that reminder. Again, it is a hard job. I've worked with admins for 4 years now, so all of you are doing fantastic. This is a tough topic. I am going to send this presentation to Joanne to send out to anybody. I am available for questions now. But also, if you do have any last questions, Joanne has my email, and I could definitely help answer any sort of questions or do a follow-up session.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. We really appreciate that. I mean, it doesn't matter what level of adoption you are at. and maturity with Workfront, I find that revisiting these key points is very valuable. I had been a Workfront system admin years and years ago, and it's just the hardest thing. That last point that Danielle was driving home, right? Like, it's so hard to make that change. Change management piece is the most difficult thing. People do not want to change printing out a status report that's been done in Excel. Well, but when they learn that, a dynamic status report done in Workfront could be so much more useful and beneficial based off of a project plan that's been done, it's just a different way of working. So it is hard, but that adoption is critical. Yeah, so thank you so much. It was really, really good to listen to that again and really get some valuable input. And yes, I will get the correct slide deck. And that,
Yeah,
sorry,
I'm sorry. That very
no,
well
no,
could have, that very
Danielle,
possibly was
you
my
know what
mistake.
I did? I took your last slide and I added it in because we were talking earlier about you just adding the slide. So you obviously made some changes throughout and I didn't incorporate them. So that's on me.
Yeah, no, it's no big deal at all. I am sending, as soon as we get off the phone, I am gonna send just the full attachment.
Great.
So all of that information that I shared is in there. I also am going to really quickly in the chat while Joanne is finishing up, just have some helpful webinars when it comes to change management and adoption and center of excellences. So I am gonna send all of that information in the chat. But if there are any additional questions, like I said, Joanne has my email. I'm happy to answer. But thank you for letting me come and speak with you all.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Just a few things to finish up. There'll be a survey sent out to you following this event. So once the event is completed, you should be receiving a survey via email. If you don't receive a survey via email, definitely reach out to me directly because I want to find out what's going on. The other thing, it's funny, Julie Wilson, who leads our entire user group program, she was wondering if my communication had gone out originally. So I did take a note. At the beginning, we were discussing that you don't actually get notified. So I'm going to take a fresh look at that. But yeah, the only other thing I had were any general questions, anything at all that anyone on the call would like to know. If there are no questions, we can complete the meeting and yeah, it's wonderful. I know it was a very small turnout. Like I said, I think there were just shy of 20 people who registered for this event today. So yeah, I know it's a difficult time. It was the beginning of a holiday week, but thank you so much. And if there's anything anyone wants to do, I'll hang on the line for a few more minutes if there's anything anyone would like to discuss. Other than that, thank you and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.